Jaspreet?
Yes, started.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. We are very glad to have you here to join us in this UNSD-DFID project webinar on user engagement during the COVID-19 pandemic. The webinar is part of a webinar series that we are conducting as part of the UNSD-DFID project. It's primarily meant as an interaction with our main counterparts in the project, which are the National Statistical Offices, or NSOs. But for this webinar, we have also decided to invite more widely, to invite our partners in the UN resident coordinator offices, in UN country teams, and in the DFID country teams as well, along with a few other partners too. So we're very happy to have you all on board. As I had been saying earlier as well, please stay muted if you can, as long as you don't interact in terms of questions, examples, etc. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this webinar is part of a series. We are posting the webinars on our UNSD-DFID project website, which you can see on the screen now. We will also be sharing the slide deck with you afterwards. User engagement is a wide topic, and this webinar will only cover certain aspects of it, and those aspects will be the ones that are particularly relevant in the COVID-19 context. We do have a lot of interaction with you at the National Statistical Offices around user engagement, but in this particular context, we will focus more on what is specifically needed in the COVID-19 context. I would again like to ask everyone to mute themselves when they're not speaking. So what we more specifically will be focusing on is how the statistical community can respond to the needs for timely and accurate data with help, which may help inform decision-making around COVID-19. And in that also try to understand what are really the needs. And we will also be discussing why it's so important to be active as a national statistical office in this context. Next slide, please. So today's agenda is as follows. We will first have an interaction where it is being discussed why it is so important that the statistical community actively contributes to making quality data available for decision making around COVID-19. Then we will be discussing which data are useful from a user's perspective and how the NSO can meet the needs. We will discuss different means of engagement. Then we will have some country experiences being shared, and we will present the COVID-19 data hubs that we have been implementing with countries and that we're also offering to project countries moving forward if there is interest. Then the webinar will be closed off with a discussion, a conclusion, and next steps. Next slide, please. So the UNSD-DFID project team, if you're not already familiar with it, consists of quite a few people. Around half of us are working close to full-time on the project. The other half is contributing through various means on specific subcomponents of the project. In a way, many of you are our users, and therefore we also want to have good interaction with you during this webinar. We are going to try out some different approaches to how we are going to run the different sessions. There will be one session conducted in the form of an interview. We will also have a session where we will do a small role play. And between sessions, we will also be using Slido, which I will be coming back to in a couple of slides. And the Slido will be run by our colleague HP. Next, please. So as I mentioned, we're all dedicated to user engagement. I think, maybe you quickly want to introduce HP, the Slido.
Yes. So the Slido will be used, as Vibeke mentioned, for some questions and answers, as well as polls, and later on the feedback. Everyone can join Slido right now. It's open. So there's 3 ways to join it. You can Google Slido.com, enter the meeting number, which is 7110. You can use the QR code, and I will post the link to the chat chat on Zoom right now. And you can join Slido through that as well. So I just posted. And once you enter Slido, you can send questions, which we will address throughout the webinar, particularly at the end. You can also view what other people have asked in terms of questions, and you can like questions similar to Facebook, as you all are probably familiar. And during the Q&A session, towards the end, we will answer the most liked questions. Well, we'll answer beginning with the most liked questions. So I'll give you a little bit of time to enter Slido.
Then in the meantime, thank you, HB. We will be coming back also to this this Slido, as HB mentioned, and you can find it in the group chat as well. Let's move to the next slide, please. So as I had mentioned, what is user engagement in this context? We as the statistics community have traditionally focused more on dissemination, on making our data available, but less on the actual interaction. But more recently, there has been an increased realization that there needs to be a two-way communication and a feedback loop. And this is being done more and more, and that is what we call user engagement in this context. Something that we see is varying a lot between countries and between agencies is the trust in the statistics community, the trust of the data of the official statistics, as we call it. And we also see that the statistical literacy varies from country to country, from population group to population group. And with statistical literacy, we mean the capability to understand data and statistics and to be critical around which data are being published, what the quality of the data are, what is being said and what is not being said, etc. And we believe that the statistics community also has a role to play in understanding the needs of people so that they also can get help to assess data critically and understand the quality considerations. So in a sense, there is also a feedback loop here between how much the statistics community interacts with the population and the trust and the literacy of the population overall. And we're mentioning this as well because user engagement is important to get feedback, but it's also important to kind of support increased trust and statistical literacy in the context. Next slide, please. So what the project covers on user engagement usually are user engagement strategies. We have developed user engagement strategies together with you in most of the 20 UNSD-DFID countries. In the user engagement workshops, we are discussing who are the users and their needs. There have also been interactive sessions where different user groups have been invited. As you can see on the picture, there is a focus group discussion with users. We also have means of engagement activities, how to interact with users, and then we discuss user-friendly dissemination of data. And you can also find all the user engagement workshop materials on our project website, and we will be sharing the link to that too. With that, I would like to hand over to two colleagues, Jaspreet Dong and and Richard Tonkin, who will be conducting an interview, one with the other, on our first project, on our first topic of today. Thank you.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. In this session, we will be discussing why is it important that we as a statistical community take an active role in making quality data available for decision-making around COVID-19. We know that a key role of national statistic offices is to bring data and the statistics to the public in a user-friendly way. We also know that there is a huge demand for data and statistics about COVID-19, and some statistics offices have responded to this by making various data available, trying to respond to users' need. In many contexts, though, actors have filled the gap or taken the show. So for my colleague Richard, I have a question, start off with the first question. Why is it so important to actively contribute official data under the current circumstances?
Thanks, Jaspreet. And you're right, of course, that there's huge demand. And in response to that, across the media and across the internet, we're seeing data and analysis coming from many different sources, including academia, civil society, and business. I think, if anything, that makes the role for official data even more important.
Why is that?
Well, although there's a huge amount of data out there, the quality can be pretty variable, to say the least. It can be very difficult for non-expert users to identify which data to trust and which not to. And even if the statistics themselves are reliable, that doesn't mean that they're being interpreted appropriately. So I really do think that there's a big role there for national statistical offices, or NSOs, in proactively engaging with users as a provider of robust, impartial information. Ultimately, I think it's tremendously helpful for users, both within government and more widely, if we can engage with them on these issues, resulting in a situation where they know that if the data they have come from the NSO, then that's something that they can trust and rely upon. And as you alluded to in your introduction, I think if the NSO isn't visible in the current situation, then there are plenty of other non-government data providers who are more than willing to step in to fill the gaps, and in most cases probably won't do as good a job.
Why the NSO in particular? In many countries, relevant official statistics are also produced by a range of other ministries and agencies.
Well, I think it's certainly true that the NSO is often just one actor in a wider national statistical system. But I think that being at the centre of that system, it can often play a crucial role in coordinating and bringing together information from a wide range of sources. Just read the right slides don't seem to be appearing.
I think you need to go back to the other version, Jaspreet, because this it was an old version. I also noticed that when I worked on my presentation.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, although the NSO is just one actor within a wider national statistical system, I think that being at the centre of that system, it can often play a crucial role in coordinating and bringing together information from a wide range of sources. And that's something we've seen already with the SDGs. While the data from some indicators are produced directly by the NSO, many other indicators come from elsewhere, but the NSO can still add a tremendous amount of value by bringing that information together, coordinating and curating those different sources to provide users with a coherent picture. And I think the COVID-19 data hubs that an increasing number of NSOs have developed are a great example of this, bringing together granular information relating to the health and economic impacts of the virus in a way in which the whole can deliver more than the sum of the parts. We'll hear more about these hubs later, But they're not the only approach. There are also very positive examples of national statistical offices playing this coordination role in the development of new COVID-19 related publications and the delivery of information directly to line ministries.
Are there any other reasons why it's helpful for the NSO to get involved?
Well, I'm mindful that in many countries, we're going to see government budgets increasingly squeezed as a result of the crisis. And I think the best way for NSOs to protect their budget as much as possible is by increasing the visibility of their work and highlighting its relevance so it's clear just how much value they add. I think the best way to do this is to show how the NSO can be fast acting and responsive to user needs in relation to COVID-19 and ensuring that its activities stay relevant as those needs evolve.
But what if the NSO has not been given a role initially in the COVID-19 response?
And I think based on my experience, both working in line ministries and working for an NSO in such circumstances, I really believe it's essential for the NSO to be proactive in seeking a role. In my experience, many policymakers often don't fully realise the value that can be added by the statistics community in informing their work, often because they don't have an analytical background themselves, so aren't aware what's possible, and don't automatically think to seek input from the NSO as they're developing policy. However, what I found is that if we can showcase to them what the NSO can provide, that input is generally warmly welcomed and typically followed up with requests for further support. So if we can provide something concrete, whether that's an initial version of what a COVID data hub might look like, or some new statistics or analysis that could help inform the pandemic, it becomes much easier to demonstrate the value the NSO can add. It can also act as a starting point for discussions exploring user needs in more depth.
Thank you, Richard. We've seen in many countries that data collection for existing official statistics have been disruptive with, for example, reduced sample sizes on surveys, which in turn can affect the precision and accuracy of estimates. And to measure the impact of COVID-19, it's often necessary to turn to new methods and new sources, which may be of variable quality. How do NSOs deal with this? Should they be reluctant to produce anything which doesn't meet the normal standards expected of official statistics?
I think all of us working in official statistics rightly care a lot about data quality, but if we're not careful, that can lead to a perfectionist tendency and unwillingness to publish estimates unless they're as good as they possibly can be. I think in these circumstances, it's really important to remember that accuracy and reliability is just one dimension of quality. We also need to consider other aspects of quality, such as relevance and timeliness and punctuality, and balance them off appropriately. Again, particularly where we are now, there's no point having the perfect estimate of something to inform a decision if that decision had to be taken several months previously. But equally, it's no good if the timely information is misleading and results in poor policy decisions. So bearing that in mind, I think the two questions we need to be asking are these data or statistics fit for purpose? And am I clearly communicating all the quality information that's necessary for people to use and understand the statistics appropriately?
How do we strike the right balance between timeliness and quality of data in the current emergency situation? How do you determine what fit for purpose looks like?
Well, to do this effectively, it's absolutely vital that we understand our users' needs. We need to understand what the types of purposes statistics will be put to, so we can start to assess, for example, where trade-offs are necessary between accuracy and timeliness, what the right balance is. Particularly in the current situation, it may be that what's required is multiple sets of statistics on the topic, with extremely timely, provisional or experimental data that allow policymakers to guide their immediate response, followed up by more accurate estimates later on, which can give what should be the definitive picture. So, for example, in the UK, the Office for National Statistics regular weekly deaths publication provides the most comprehensive and accurate picture of deaths due to COVID-19. But as it's based on death registrations, there's a time lag of around 10 days, depending on how quickly the deaths are registered. So it's therefore realised that there was a user need for more timely information too. So ONS supported the Health Ministry in producing daily figures of COVID-19 deaths, necessarily based on a more limited definition of those who had tested positive for COVID-19. Of course, The existence of multiple sets of figures can potentially increase opportunities for confusion among users. So ONS also had a vital role in engaging with users, particularly the media, and communicating the reasons for those differences.
So what can we do to engage users on these issues around quality? How can NSOs communicate this information effectively?
Well, I think there's really two very important things that we can do. First, we need to ensure that we're being transparent around quality and providing all the relevant information alongside the statistics. Second, we need to do this in a way which is accessible to users with varying levels of statistical literacy. If we know that there are ways that statistics might get used to make inferences which aren't possible due to data limitations, whether that's discontinuities or small sample sizes, we need to be clear what can be concluded from the data and what can't. So in communicating this type of information, there's a danger of two extremes, neither of which is that helpful. Sometimes we can hide everything away right at the very back of publications in small print or in some obscure corner of a website. Alternatively, I've seen releases with literally pages of caveats and warnings before you even get to a single number. Of course, the danger of the latter approach is that when confronted with all this information, users are overwhelmed, simply switch off and don't pay attention to any of it. What I found is most effective is short, simple points written in straightforward language, bearing in mind that terms such as error, bias, and significance can often be misunderstood by a non-statistical audience, and presenting this information directly alongside the relevant figures. We should also look to communicate uncertainty in data visualizations where appropriate, while supplementing all of this with more detailed information on quality and methods, ideally in its own section within the main body of any publication. And finally, I'd like to add that I think the way that we engage on social media and with the press is important too. With social media, I think this ideally goes beyond simply sending out tweets to promote releases, but fully engaging with users, answering questions, joining conversations, and correcting where statistics are being misinterpreted. Similarly, when it's possible to get statisticians from the National Statistics Office appearing on TV or radio and speaking about the statistics themselves, that's always going to be better for ensuring that the figures are being communicated clearly and accurately.
Thank you, Richard, for this very insightful and comprehensive input and showcasing how we as a statistical community, and more specifically the National Statistics Offices, should be proactive and in the forefront of providing relevant quality data, while also concurrently demonstrating our value in the decision-making process. I want to thank Richard again. I'm going to now pass it on to my colleague, HP.
Thank you very much. For those who have joined after my initial presentation on Slido, you can use the link on the Zoom chat to enter the Slido page for this particular webinar. Again, thank you, Jaspreet and Richard, for the interview. There is a poll, if you see Slido right now, there is a poll on the interview regarding the session. So if you can take a look at that. So it looks like there's about 20 people logged on to Slido and about 7 votes so far. So perhaps we need a little bit more time to finish our polling. Other than the poll, you can also click on the question and Q&A tab if you have any questions for any of the presentations or sessions so far. Okay, so let's take a look at the results. So the participants have overwhelmingly agreed that the NSOs have an important role in engaging with users to provide data relating to COVID-19. I think if you have any questions for this particular session, please do. Okay, sorry. The results should be now visible.
We can't see them, HB.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Here you go.
Great. So we already have a convinced community here, but let's continue and discuss some of this in any case. And we'll be coming back to the more Slido questions after this session and also later on in the webinar. So the next session, as I mentioned briefly earlier, is a session where we will do a small role play. The role play takes place at the National Statistical Office between two people who are discussing issues related to making data available on COVID-19. Many of the aspects covered are taken from various conversations we've been part of ourselves or heard others refer to from any different discussions they have been part of. They reflect some of the challenges that NSOs are faced with, which started even before the COVID-19 pandemic. For instance, which role should the NSO play in society? How proactively should we engage? And what is the role of a statistical office related to the work of other data providers? The two persons in this role play present a communications officer at the statistics office who is optimistic about how the new COVID response they are establishing is coming together, and the statistician who is skeptical of some of the ideas and asks critical questions. Elena de Jesus will be the communications officer, while I, Vibeke Nielsen, will be representing the statistician. So Elena, are you ready to go with our small role play?
Yes. Hi there, Vibeke.
Hi. So please go ahead.
Hi. So I'm really excited about these new materials that we're putting together on COVID-19.
Yes, but we need to be a bit careful in what data we provide.
Yes, well, we're putting online some georeference data that we already have, together with new data from the Ministry of Health. So, for example, we're showing the incidence of COVID-19 infections by district, overlap with median household income map by district. And we're also showing healthcare facility coverage across the districts, such as which areas have how many hospital beds and how these relate to population size and infection rates. I think it's a good start. We'd want to get feedback from users to see if there's any other kinds of data that they may be looking for.
But how do you ensure that the data you're publishing isn't duplicating or even contradicting the data coming from the Ministry of Health?
Yeah, that's a valid concern, which is why we established a partnership with the ministry to explain what we wanted to do and to figure out a way for the data to be in sync. So we're actually grabbing the Ministry of Health data from their website as soon as it's published via web service in SDMX format and integrating it with our own data before displaying it. So that way, any changes made by the ministry are reflected in real time.
Sounds interesting, but doesn't the ministry also have a website where they publish the number of cases per district? Why would we create a whole other website?
Well, yeah, definitely. The ministry is the authoritative source of data on COVID-19 infections. They get their data directly from administrative records from testing sites. But what they don't have is the access that we at the statistics office have to other data that may be relevant for providing an overall picture of the effects of the pandemic.
I see. But then how do we know what is relevant to publish?
I'm very happy that you're asking that question, because I think it's really a key aspect of being successful with this new COVID-19 age. So as a starting point, what we've done is we've explored what other countries have included in their COVID-19 data hubs. Data on socioeconomic impact, unemployment, and food insecurity can help policymakers make decisions on how to distribute aid. And there are even simpler examples. From censuses and household surveys, we have information about the age distribution in the different regions and the share of people who have access to soap and clean water. And so combining these data can help both the Ministry of Health and other decision makers plan interventions better ahead of the spread of the virus. For example, we could have data showing a region having very poor access to safe water sources, and that could help the government redistribute more medical equipment, disinfectant, protective supplies there. And similarly, age distribution and prevalence of comorbidities can give an indication of where more people may get more severely ill.
Wow, a lot of good examples here, but is all of this relevant in our context? How do we go about selecting data that is relevant for us or in our context?
Another great question, Rebecca. That's why user engagement is so important. I think we should ask some of our key user groups what their main needs are. I think we could probably prepare a few key questions that we ask a selected number of users. And since it's difficult to meet in person these days, we could start maybe with a quick online questionnaire that we could send out via email, and then we can follow up with more in-depth phone interviews with some selected individuals. And I think this could better help us understand which of our data could be relevant in the context and which data we could get from other actors. I've already started scribbling some questions down based on some earlier exchanges we've had with different users.
Interesting, but wouldn't it still be easier to just make a quick call to some of the ministries to get their inputs like we usually do?
Well, I think it's very important that we also ask user groups such as the media, the private sector, NGOs, teachers, health workers, because involving them in the process may help us get more visibility around the work that we do and may motivate them to help us with access to the data. The more our COVID-19 related products are useful to the different groups, the more likely that we can establish a positive feedback loop where the products are being used and further enhanced with new data.
I know I'm asking many questions now, but I expect that we will get a lot of different requests. How would we deal with all of that?
I think the approach we could take is to consolidate different suggestions and requests and see what's coming in through as key needs. We could then match these with what we ourselves already have available, and then what we could possibly get from other data owners, such as line ministries, the private sector, and NGOs, and what we could potentially collect ourselves moving forward.
I can see that we probably have some existing data that are relevant to COVID-19 and that we could make those available. And conducting a survey to get more data also sounds like a good idea. But how would we get access to other data sources though, when we can't even manage that at regular times?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I think my best answer to that is that we just have to try. Maybe the current circumstances and the sense of urgency might help. Maybe it could also help us to present the needs from a user's perspective. In that context, following a dialogue with the COVID-19 task force on their needs, we could also ask for their support in reaching out to the relevant data owners in the interest of more informed decision-making.
How about the legal challenges, privacy concerns, etc. though?
I think our legal framework should be able to guide us when it comes to the sharing overall. On privacy, we would not be sharing individual level data, and all of our staff have already signed confidentiality agreements, so I think that we should be covered.
It would be great if that could work. It sounds quite interesting, actually. I see another issue related to that, though. how many of the data we are receiving from other actors are actually in a state where we could use them. Many of them have serious data quality flaws, particularly if we are to disaggregate them by region.
Yeah, you're right. This is an ongoing concern. Because of the high profile of the situation, this may actually be a good opportunity for the Statistics Office to build capacity around improving data quality in government agencies and in provincial administrative units, depending on the need. I've heard that other countries have established working groups where they discuss data quality and what makes the data set fit for publishing. And some countries are also choosing an approach where data are published as experimental, meaning that they're not official statistics, but they're seen to have a value added to the public. For example, data from telecom companies and satellite imagery, which can help track the movement of populations and identify vulnerable groups.
As long as we don't lose the trust of the public, though, I'm a bit concerned about that.
I understand your concern, but I think that if we document what we're doing properly and we're transparent about our decisions, it can actually help build trust. What I'm more concerned about is who will fill the gap if we don't. We've already seen some scary examples of data that are published and used in decision-making, which are far below our quality standards. The focus with this kind of data is usually generating attention-grabbing news content rather than providing the public with reliable information. I think we're in a position to help ensure that the public debate is based on sound data and accompanying metadata. Also, going back to the user engagement, which we touched upon earlier, I think our main role is to bring timely and reliable information to meet the needs of the public and our key users. And this is more important now than ever before.
I guess the Statistics Office does have a role to play in informing the public on COVID-19 related aspects. How can I help in getting us started with the work?
Well, let's continue our discussion on that.
Thank you, Elena. I hope you all liked our little role play. It's what we had for today on the role play specifically. I'd now like to hand over back to HP to give you another polling question on Slido.
Thank you very much. That was, at least for me, a very convincing role play. So let's go back to Slido. I will share a screen with you right now on the poll. So if you go to Slido, again, if you haven't joined Slido yet, you can either enter the Slido page for this webinar through the link shared on the chat, or you can go directly to slido.com and enter 7110 for the event number. So the question is, how convinced are you of the success of the Statistics Office is, a lot of S's, sorry, approach to making COVID-19 response data available? Okay, so for the results, let's take a quick look. So of the 18 participants who voted so far, well, again, you're overwhelmingly convinced, although a lot of you are somewhat convinced. So I suppose you can ask some questions and perhaps add some pointers on Slido on how the NSO can improve their approach.
Thank you, HB. I think that's a good suggestion. Please, everyone, use Slido, or you can also use the group chat here on Zoom to ask questions that we will come back to at the end of this session for the questions and answers. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague Faryal Ahmed, who will be talking with us about means of engagement. Please go ahead, Faryal.
Thank you so much, Vibeka. Hello, everyone. This is Faryal. I'd be covering a few tools and approaches that we would be using for our users or national statistics offices have used in the past to interact with users effectively. So far, we've heard about why it's important for the stat community to take an active role in making quality data available, and some of the potential ways that the NSOs can apply to meet user needs during the pandemic. However, to respond to the pandemic, it's not only critical for the stat community to deliver this quality data, but also produce and disseminate data that can meet the urgent needs and in these critical times. In order to do so, it's vital to interact with users of data and statistics through various means in order to understand the needs of users and respond accordingly. Also, considering that the NSOs and the National Statistical System overall is facing a capacity squeeze given the unprecedented data demands in the critical time, this would also enable producers of data to understand the user needs and utilize the resources efficiently and respond effectively. And this kind of relates to the point that Richard made earlier as well, that we need to find a trade-off of how to utilize resources to respond effectively in the current times. Next slide. Thank you. As we know, data and stats produced by the National Statistics System is used by various users, and these include policymakers, academia, journalists, civil society, partners, and amongst many others, including the general public. Engaging with these user groups through various tools and approaches, firstly, helps identify their urgent needs. And secondly, it helps develop and strengthen ties with the users. That's more building trust with the users, where they feel that they're being engaged in the process at the various stages of statistical production. And also, these engagement tools can be also used to explore collaboration with other data producers to track the effects of COVID-19. We'll look into more of this in depth as we move further. These tools can also be used to obtain inputs at various stages of statistical production, to obtain inputs from users and producers, both multilaterally or bilaterally, given the context. Next slide. So over here, we have a few tools that can be used for increased engagement. You might have used a lot of these tools already in your NSO or in various capacities. Some of these tools can be used for sharing information with users, while others can be used to facilitate interactions, which is like a two-way communication between the users and producers. So it's not only to improve communication and increase awareness of what products the NSO is producing, but it's also a way of data sharing among the wider national statistical system. We have seen many of these tools being used in countries at various stages, just to highlight that this is not an exhaustive list. And we would also like to hear from countries later on what tools they've used beyond this list that we have here, or which of these tools that we present here are already being used in terms of success of these tools. Can I go back to the previous slide? Thanks. I think Alena mentioned in her role play exercise that these tools can either be used in combination or they can be used on its own. For example, let's say if a new COVID survey is being launched, a focus group discussion or a virtual call could be used to engage with users to understand the needs of the survey and how the survey could be designed. And following the survey, there could be a user satisfaction survey to get feedback from the users. and social media to introduce the survey to the larger public. So this on its own, it can sometimes not be sufficient, so they can be used in conjunction with other tools as well. So here we have user satisfaction survey, which is we're already aware used by many NSOs to obtain feedback, either for individual survey or the NSO's performance in meeting the demands for various users overall. Social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, and any other means where you can communicate and as well as hear back from the users on the performance of various products. Then we have the toll-free lines. In some countries where electronic media is not that prevalent, toll-free lines could be a good means for to provide users an easy way to get in touch with the producers of data. Then radio shows is to increase awareness on the products, because if the users are not aware of what products are available, they won't be fully informed to give feedback in terms of whether it meets their demands or not. Next slide, please. Here are some of the tools that are more for two-way engagement, virtual conferences. I'm mentioning more virtual here because we're in a unique setting where we cannot meet physically. So the virtual conference is a tool where you can get more of information sharing as well. And then we have the bilateral meetings, something that Vibeke also mentioned during her role play, that, this is more in terms of, when you want to get in touch with ministry one-on-one, and we understand that a lot of you are also, this way of engaging is very popular in your offices. Then we have the virtual focus group discussions. This is something that we've seen quite often in the past few months, where different, in this case, you would engage with different user groups to obtain a very focused feedback. For example, if you launch a product, you would gather a few journalists to hear from them of what they think, whether the data that is produced by the NSO or the dashboard that is out there meets their demands or not, and how they can be improved. So these focus group discussions are usually framed by questions. Those are the questions that, for example, Elena presented in her role play exercise, where you have a set questions that you ask her during each focus group discussion to obtain information which is substantive for you to inform your decision making. Then we have the COVID-19 data dashboard. You might have seen this in many countries as well as international organizations. Something that Richard also mentioned in his presentation, that this is something that is used to visually display data to for various users, which is very interactive maps that you can see of how many cases exist, what's the impact of COVID-19, and so on. We'll get more into detail with this as we move forward. Yeah. Next slide, please. Thank you. When can these tools be used? So these tools can be used at various stages. Firstly, when you're introducing a new product. So before even launching a new product, you'd like to understand from various users whether this product would be useful or not. Then, for example, if an NSO is producing a statistical product for 20 years, but would like to hear what specific module is not being used, because we all know that when you're collecting data, the number of questions in the questionnaire really impact the quality of data. So we want to see what is redundant and maybe consider reducing a module based on feedback from the user or usability of the data. And then the modification of a statistical product, this also relates to the example that I just gave, and on the module. And then lastly, we have the feedback on a statistical product. This could be through user satisfaction survey, focus group discussion, or any other tool that you have found effective in your context. Next slide. So these are just some of the tools that I went through, but I would really like to hear from all of you of how you have engaged with data and statistics users to understand their needs during the pandemic, because this is a critical time, and I'm sure a lot of you have used creative ways to get in touch with the users So let's hear from you. I see that Rwanda, would you like to share your experiences? Jean-Luc, you can unmute yourself. Oh, we have Jean-Claude. Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. The statistics office of UNDA, as you know, is coordinating all statistical activities through the national statistical system. So the part of users, we have a line where people may ask questions, clarifications on statistics published by Statistics Office. We also, even though we are in this COVID context, we have taken some measures to keep receiving few.
I think we lost Jean-Luc. Can we go over to maybe Vietnam?
Hello?
Okay, great. Jean-Claude, yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. I was saying that with the COVID context, we have taken some measures just to keep receiving people coming to our office, requesting for more clarifications or expressing their desires towards the availability of statistics. In terms of our engagement and relations with the users, these days we are receiving request, that anyone who wants to conduct any statistical activities in Rwanda, especially the collection of statistics of data, we request them to come to NISR and get authorization. So these days we are getting a quite big number of people wanting to conduct surveys related to COVID impact or effects, but limiting them, or we are advising
in the chat window. It would be really interesting to hear from you, and maybe others can also learn from your experiences. Vietnam, would you like to take the floor and share some of your experiences?
You're far from the mic, Mr. Vin. Maybe you can come a bit closer to your microphone.
Okay. Would anybody else like to share their experiences of how they've engaged with users during the pandemic to understand the needs?
Mr. Vin, you're very far from the microphone, so we can barely hear you. So if you have a chance to get closer to your microphone, that would be... now it's better. Thank you.
Now it's okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and regarding to our situation and our break COVID-19, and we have only 3 weeks for the social distancing and from the government, and so many operations of our office have been affected. But I think that is not as much as the other countries. So, and in line with the context of COVID-19, we have roasted, and the first one, and we will have roasted our employment to every other day to ensure 50% staff you work from home, and 50% and still perform their work at the office. So regarding to information, and we have many requests from government, not for all of the data users. So, and we work very hard We have a total of 14 static survey conducted in March and in April. So you have to rush direction. Some survey and we switch to some May, and some survey we postpone 15 or 30 days. And also, and some survey you can remove from the first quarter to the second quarter. And to get the data from the locals, and we connect with some line ministries and to design and the very special table, and to send it to the local government and to get many information from the local government. But it is a very good channel and to get information. And also, and for the other tasks, we have to work very hard. We have to update the data on social economic situation every 2 weeks. We also want to update very regular and price for many products. And so we also want to also, and every 2 weeks we have a report to the government, and also we have to update the local economy situation. And for the survey, and besides the regular survey, and according to my government request, we conduct 2 kinds of very special survey. And the first one is the survey on enterprise, and the survey this is a survey, and we conduct 10 days by the web form. And very fortunately, we have a total around 20% of the enterprise. They can come, log in the web form and to have a response. So, and we think that during the short some conduct the survey on online survey, the response rate is 20%. I think it's a very successful, because the managed enterprise, they pay more attention about what is the solution the government will be applied, right? So the survey, the questionnaires and survey, we have a total only 10 questions, but it's many choice. So and from this survey, and we have a very special report to the public, for government also, and the public for all the data user, so they can the data user can understand the situation about the production of enterprise. And also, when for some survey, for example, and price statistics, we must change the method, because before the COVID, and we conduct face-to-face, but during the COVID, you can change from face-to-face to the telephone survey. So we also want to get the data statistics for price, and to submit to my government and every 2 weeks, and even sometimes is in 1 week. And the answer in one very special survey is a labor force survey. And this is a survey, and we conduct every month, and during the March and April, we contact with the ILO, so when can and to revise and this questionnaire, we put some new question, and also and to revise some old question, and to get the situation of the labor force, also, and the salary, the income, social, and we have a support, and to get a report to support, submit and to my government. And so, and in a few, maybe in 27, and we can have a very special press conference and to release and the result of the labor force survey in second quarter. And also when regarding to the information from the line ministry, we always have many remote online and survey, and to talk with them and how as our office also as a line ministry can share and the information about the COVID impact on situation. So we can summarize and to get a very special and report from my government and to public for the data user by platform. That is some main idea. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Min. That's great to hear because it's a great example of understanding how you used it used to user different tools at the various stages of the statistical production. So that's very, very interesting to hear. Do we have somebody from Liberia to share their experiences?
Pardon me?
Yes. Do we have somebody from Liberia?
I can't see them, Farial.
Yes, okay. Then over to you, Viveka. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Farial, and thank you also to those of you who shared some of your experiences. I think it's very useful to hear what you are doing in the different countries. I'd now also like to hand over to our last speaker, Mr. Luis Gonzalez, who will be showing us some examples linked to COVID-19 data hubs and how they can be used in this context of user engagement. Please go ahead, Luis.
Thank you, Vivek, and hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. If not, please just let me know. I think we've had very, very interesting experiences from Vietnam, from Rwanda. How national statistical offices are responding to the new user needs in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I just want to step back a little bit and provide some context that helps see how this new model of data hub can help the statistical office assume the leadership role that they are called to play in making sure that the user needs are for data are satisfied. So if we reflect of the old pipeline model of statistical production, in the past we had data producers at one end and data users at the other, and then through a linear value data value chain, data assets are created and transferred, and the quality and flow of data assets from producers to consumers was managed through a centrally controlled mechanisms. But now the situation has dramatically changed. In the current decentralized data ecosystem, there is no single source of the truth. There is no single integrated database containing all the information needed, say, even in the context of the 2030 agenda, but more particularly now to respond to global challenges like the COVID-19 pandemic. So we know that there are many data assets being maintained across the national statistical system within different institutions and across different institutions, organizations, and countries. And there are many players who are responsible for collecting data and for reporting data at different levels and in different domains. So there is need to combine, to play with the tension that we have of the need for coordination and a data system, data ecosystem that is highly decentralized. So we need data management approach that is flexible while allowing for the integration of this data, and that facilitates sharing and reuse among actors that are pretty much autonomous from each other. Next slide, please. So this would put the user at the center. We need to have an approach that with this new data hub model, the user is the one that brings all different efforts together. So in this new data hub model, autonomous data producers and data users connect and interact with one another to share and to co-create data and information content, to consume data services and analysis and visualizations, and to add value to the data that is generated from multiple sources. And also through this network, it is possible to convey feedback from the users to the different data producers. So we are in a setting now where often producers are as well users of data from other actors. So the relationship between producers and users is not any more linear, but is an interconnected network. And this is where the data hub model comes to play, and where the statistical office is called to assume a very important role to connect communities of producers and data users, and to facilitate the creation, the sharing, and the application of high quality data. And so we go back to some of the topics that we were discussing at the beginning of this webinar, where the statistical offices, national statistical organizations, can help strike this balance between addressing user needs and other like timeliness and accuracy within the context of a data quality framework. The leadership role of the national statistical organizations, then, it's more of in terms of orchestrating how different players collaborate in the data environment, ensuring that all stakeholders are engaged, that there is proper governance for the data ecosystem, and curating the collection of open and participatory data hubs within the national statistical system and in connection, say, even at the international level. So the role of the national statistical organizations becomes even more important to orchestrate and to manage the data value creation when the pipeline for data creation is not there anymore. It's as I was saying at the beginning, more of an interconnected network of value production and data use. Next slide, please. So as an example that we wanted to highlight in this webinar, how this new model is open up a lot of possibilities to ensure that the data that comes from different members of the national statistical system reaches the users, and that users are able to find the data that they need, is this the emergence that we see more and more in different countries and at international level also of COVID-19 data hubs. On your screen, you have, for instance, the COVID-19 data hub that we have set up at the United Nations Statistics Division, where users can find geospatial data web services ready to be used to produce maps and visualizations and analysis, and also find data that comes from different levels of reporting in different topics on the epidemic, on health, on economy, and society. So these COVID-19 data hubs use WebGIS technologies for sharing available data resources and in an open and interoperable environment. And the idea is to help partners from across national statistical system within a country to open up their own COVID-19 data, allowing them to respond more effectively to the urgent demand from their constituencies. Now, there are very, very good examples at the global and international level, but more importantly at the national level. So in our COVID-19 data hub at the UN, what we would like to emphasize is that the potential to share data across organizations. So, for instance, you see in our page, you see the data that is directly collated by the statistics division alongside data that is being shared by countries. So this is the vision towards giving through these data hubs to the user access to data that is produced within a system of trusted partners, and they find in one place access to all these data resources. So next slide, please. So these data hubs provide links to relevant resources, dashboards, and visualizations that also help communicate data more easily to different types of users, to policymakers, and to the public at large. Now, I don't know if I can share my screen. I would like just to put on your screen live 2 examples. If Jasper could you allow me to share my screen for a minute? In any case, I will put on the chat 2 links.
You should have access now, Luis.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Oh, sorry, just but it's I have another user with my own name that I need to be able to share screen from. In the meantime, I'm putting on the web chat the 2 links I wanted to show you from the examples of COVID-19 that was put together by Palestine and Ghana Statistical Service, the Palestine Central Bureau of Statistics and Ghana Statistical Service. Yeah, somehow my screen sharing is not working, it's disabled. But
you should have the host access at one of your users.
Sorry for that. It's because I'm using multiple instances of my account. Somehow it's not working. Yeah, I would say instead of wasting your time on this, I would like to invite you to visit these two links that I've put in the chat, where you can see the examples of COVID-19 data hubs that have been stood up by Ghana Statistical Service and by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, and invite you to consider how this tool can help reach users with data visualizations, and maybe just if you can put again on the screen the screenshot of our own data hub, how these tools can help not only reach the users with visuals and with tools that are easier to understand for the users, but also bring attention to sources of data that are available throughout the statistical system, but that can come together in a coherent manner with the coordination and collaboration of the National Statistical System and the National Statistical Office.
Sorry, Louis, I don't have the host access, so I can't share my screen right now, because I think it's on your user end.
Yeah, so maybe you remove my host access at the moment.
I can't. I can't do it. Yeah, it's
Oh,
on your end now.
so should I give it to Mitch?
So maybe while the two of you are looking into this, thank you very much, Luis, for sharing your views and points around the COVID-19 data hubs in this specific context. In addition to putting it in the group chat, we will also make the links available on the project website afterwards. And the project is supporting all those of you who are interested in exploring the creating similar pages for yourself. I know that we have initiated some discussions with some of you already, and we're also planning some general trainings on how to use it. I see that we now have the Ghana COVID-19 hub on the page, but due to time considerations, I think we will have to move on to the next and the last part of this webinar, which is the Q&A session. So while you are exploring a bit more around the hubs yourself, or we would encourage you to do that yourself, you can also contact us after the webinar, and we can also do more specific sessions with you to run you through both the how it works and how it's being set up. I'd like to hand over for HP for the Q&A. Please go ahead, HP.
Thank you, Viveke. Unfortunately, I cannot share my screen, but for those who have logged on to Slido, you're going to be able to see 2 questions so far. If you have any, yes, and Louis, if you have time, if you can make me the host, so I can share my screen, that would also be good. So let me just go ahead and remind everybody, if you haven't done so already, you can log on to Slido. You can log on to Slido. The meeting number is 7110. Oh, here we go. I am the host now. Give me a quick second. Okay, as you can see, we do have 2 questions, and I'll leave it up to my colleagues to answer it, but just to read the top one right now, it's what can statistics offices do if users like media are using wrong data? So if one of our, yes, Vivek, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I could start, and then I'm sure Richard also has some additional views on this. From my point of view, there are many different things you could do. One is to interact with the media bilaterally to discuss with them how they could work more on this moving forward, maybe conduct some trainings with them, some discussion sessions, so that they would be more aware of which data to use moving forward. There's also possibilities to kind of have to kind of go out in media and say that here are some official statistics. You could liaise with other partners around that. That being said, wrong data is maybe a little bit unclear. There might still be other sources that are reliable and good. So often, from my experience, it's not so much about the wrong data, it's how it's being presented. And there, we as statistics officers could also be very helpful to the media and other actors in kind of helping them understand better how to properly present the data and statistics that they have available, as we mentioned around statistical literacy, for instance. Maybe you would like to add something as well, Richard.
Sure. So I think my experience of working with a kind of range of different media organisations is that generally they always want to report on data kind of accurately, or at least the vast majority of cases they kind of want to use statistics appropriately, but yeah, most journalists tend to have an arts background, aren't necessarily the most comfortable with using statistics and other forms of data. So it's key as a NSO, as a statistics office, to try and build up those relationships. As Rebecca said, I can go and offering training, something which some of my former colleagues at the UK Statistics Office have done. We've organised secondments into media organisations, so statisticians spend, whether it's a week up to a few months working within different media organisations, providing them support from within, and that's been tremendously effective in improving the quality of stuff.
Okay, thank you very much to both. We can move on to the next question, which is, what could NSOs do to ensure that the ministries of health and other users get quality and disaggregated COVID-19 data on time? Do we have anybody?
I could start on this one first again. I think there will also be others who might have suggestions on this, and also happy to hear from others in the audience if any of you have experiences with this. So I think there are different aspects to this question. One is who is the primary data collector in this? If the data come from the hospitals and the different health facilities themselves, I think the Ministry of Health together with the Statistics Office could work on quality routines, on routines for how to make the data available. I think in this context also a feedback loop is quite important to inform the different health providers about the importance of providing accurate data to the Ministry of Health, to their registry, so that the data also that are published are useful for the different decision makers. So a feedback loop on questioning some of the reported data could be useful, and here the NSO could come in as a data quality expert with data quality expertise. If other sources are used, the NSO could of course come in and conduct surveys to assess the quality of other potential data, or also provide information through the surveys. But those are usually taking more time unless you would do some rapid assessments, for instance, over the phone, which also could be an option to try and get an overview of the situation, which would not be a full count, I think. And then there are also probably some new data sources that could be brought into the picture. So there are different options in the context.
Thank you very much. So if any of the audience members or the participants have a response, we would also welcome that.
Yes, HB. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
In this respect, we have overcome this issue in one way, that we have one report issued for Jordan case, and it is announced disaggregated in a specific time. So all the sources inside Jordan, they are using the same information in this report daily, and the information is consistent for all sources in this regard. So as one direction or one body is responsible for this report in Jordan, with the disaggregated information, we have one information used for all public or users, and even though the official bodies.
Thank you very much. So due to the time constraints, I would like to move on to the next part well, as we're wrapping up the webinar, I would like to just move on to the last part on Slido, which is if you have any comments, feedback, and suggestions for future webinars, you can comment, you can go to Slido to make those suggestions in a form of a poll. Thank you very much.
Thank you, HP, and thank you for running the Slido. As he was mentioning, please give us additional feedback on Slido, or you can also reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions, things you want to discuss with us. And as you know, we are available to any questions and ideas you might have. If the COVID-19 hubs are interesting to you, we would be happy to support you in that. We could do more in-depth user engagement activities with you, and we could also support other aspects of the work, as you know. So please contact us, and we will follow up as far as we can. And to basically summarize this webinar, and what the main message has been, we believe that this situation might be a good opportunity to show how useful a statistics office can be for informing government and the population about the COVID-19 situation. And we think that we as a statistics community have an important role to play in the context. With that, I want to thank you everyone for joining us at this webinar. We hope you found it useful. Please let us know if there's anything. And if you have feedback for future webinars as well. We will be sharing the recording and also the other materials on our UNSD-DFID project webpage, so that you can have a look or share with colleagues if they are interested to also have a look. Thank you very much again. Have a good afternoon and evening, everyone, and we'll stay in touch. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you from Liberia. Found it very useful. I'm Stanley Kamau, UNDP Liberia.